lot of people struggle with some basic math concepts, and one of those things that gives a lot of people trouble is fractions. And fractions are difficult enough, but when it comes time to add and subtract them, they become even more difficult. Well, in this short video, I'm going to show you how to better understand adding and subtracting fractions using something you're probably carrying around in your pocket or purse right now, your pocket change. Well, just a quick review on fractions. Remember, fractions have a denominator, and the denominator is how many pieces it takes to make one whole. The numerator is how many of those pieces that you have. Now, when we're dealing with our pocket change, our coins, we have limited denominations. We have pennies that represent 1/100th, nickels that represent 1/20th, dimes that are 1/10th of a dollar, 25-cent pieces or quarters that are 1/4, half dollars that are half dollars, and of course we have dollar coins, which is the whole. All right, let's try some fraction addition. So let's assume that we want to add 1/4 plus 1/10. Well, that's represented with coins as a quarter and as a dime. So let's go ahead and see how that works. Now, because we're dealing with coins and because everybody knows how to handle money, you're probably thinking, well, that's easy. You just use the decimal equivalents. You take 0.25 plus zero point 0.1 and you end up with 35 cents. A quarter plus a dime is 35 cents. However, that's not what we're trying to do today. We're trying to learn to use fraction addition and subtraction using our coins. So let's go ahead and find out some other concepts about working with fractions for adding and subtracting. Again, if we were using the decimal equivalent, we could add these very easily by just using 0.25 plus zero point 0.1. However, we're using fractions, and remember we have a quarter, which is 1/4, and a dime, which is 1/10, and we can't add fourths and tenths together. We have to convert them into a common fraction. Now, we can add fractions with the same denominator. For instance, we can add 1/3 plus 2/3. So our next step is actually going to be finding a common denominator. So to find a common denominator, we're looking for a value that both values are multiples of. In other words, we can multiply 4 times 25 and get 100. We can multiply 10 times 10 and get 100. So 100 would indeed be a common denominator. So we can use pennies as our denominator. Let's go ahead and see how that works. 100ths, or in this case pennies, definitely qualify as a common denominator. So we can convert 25 100ths from 1/4 to 25 100ths because we're multiplying 4 by 25 to 10 100ths. We're multiplying 1 by 10 and 10 by 10 to use the common denominator of 100. The problem is, though, that's a lot of stuff to count, a lot of pennies to count, and a lot of pennies to carry around in your pocket. So we're going to look for a better common denominator than 100. To work best with fractions, we want to find the least or the smallest common denominator. Well, we can use 100, we saw, but that creates some problems here. But actually, both 4 and 10 have 20 as a common multiple. So we can convert 1/4 and 1/10 both into 20ths, which in our denominations that we're using for our coins equates to nickels. Well, we saw that we could use 100ths as a common denominator, but we saw that wasn't very practical, and of course we want to find the smallest or the least common denominator. We determined that with our coins that was 20ths or nickels. So we converted 1/4 to 5/20ths by multiplying both the numerator and the denominator by 5. Remember, the numerator is how many pieces that you have, the denominator is how many pieces it takes to make a whole. We converted 1/10 to 2/20ths by multiplying both the numerator and the denominator by 2. And so now we have 5/20ths plus 2/20ths equating to 7/20ths or 7 nickels. Much easier to count 7 than it was 35 pennies. Well, using our pocket change, it's very easy to understand how to subtract fractions. So let's take an example. Let's assume that we have 1/2 represented by a half dollar minus 1/10 represented by a dime. Well, I think we want to go ahead and rule out 100ths or pennies for the common denominator and see if we can find something a little bit smaller. Well, fortunately for both halves and tenths, a common denominator actually is 10. So we can multiply our half by 5 and end up with tenths. So we're going to convert both fractions into tenths, then we'll be able to subtract them. So now we have some very easy math to do. We have 5/10ths or 5 dimes. We're going to subtract 1 dime, and of course we'll end up with 4/10ths left over. Very, very easy to do when we simply use the example of pocket change to figure out how to add and subtract fractions. Hopefully this short video helped you understand better how to add and subtract fractions using coins to better understand them. If you like the video, please like it. Consider subscribing. Remember, I have additional resources and additional videos out on my website, luthermaddy.com. Thank you, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video.